My name is Neal, and this is my final presentation for CS 6795 on attention capture and salience in learning for students with autism spectrum disorder. There is the agenda. We'll go through an introduction, literature review design, results, discussion, conclusion, and limitations. In the introduction, we'll first talk about how attention is a foundational concept in cognitive science. It's crucial for other cognitive science concerns like memory, perception, and learning. And importantly, there are three types of saliency or what causes us to capture our attention on something. One is object, or bottom up. It's something about an object that causes us to look. Or observer goals, which is when we have something we're pursuing that drives what we pay attention to. Or sometimes social interactions or social salience impacts what we pay attention to. Now, this issue of attention is important to ASD or autism spectrum disorder as well. Often students with ASD don't attend to proper things in order to increase learning or don't remove fixation on other things that are a distraction and hinder learning. Thus, this research question was to determine what cognitive science have discovered about attention capture and salience and understand how that differs for students with ASD and then determine mitigations to help overcome those difficulties. It's an important topic both because of the students themselves as well as the stress and burden on caregivers and the overall economic impact to our societies. Initially, I had a broad review on eye motion studies in ASD, but I narrowed that to attention capture and saliency to be able to focus on cognitive science issues particularly, and broke my research into two segments, both understanding saliency and attention capture, especially related to ASD, and then using that understanding to determine mitigations on learning scenarios for students with ASD. The results were those three types of saliency. Two differ for students with ASD. Object salience is similar or even better in students with ASD. In fact, they rely on this primarily or solely. Observer goals is significantly weaker in students with ASD. A weak executive function means they might fixate on an object that's not relevant. And while there is some research that demurs on this, it isn't compelling, and the paper goes into those details. And then social salience is another situation that is different for students with ASD. Typically, developing peers successfully look at what a teacher is looking at to help enhance learning, but students with ASD often do not. So how do we use those learnings to mitigate and improve learning outcomes? One is just to enhance the object, the relevant object, to find ways to enhance the relevant object for students. Another is to use their reliance, students with ASD's reliance on object saliency to overcome limitations in social salience. For instance, students with ASD often won't look at another's face or mouth even though that would help them in their learning given their phonology strengths. But if you'll move the relevant object towards a face, that can increase learning outcomes. Or just reducing noise in the environment so that there's less things to distract to could be another mitigation. And finally, there are some recent novel strategies using augmented reality and even animals to help enhance visual disengagement. In conclusion, we learned a lot about saliency and attention capture and how that relates specifically to ASD. An important conclusion for myself as a parent of someone with ASD and as other teachers who might work with students with ASD is that it requires creative techniques to overcome those deficiencies in attention capture. And furthermore, understanding issues related to saliency can be really helpful in determining those creative techniques. Now, there were some limitations to the study. In particular, those new, novel, but encouraging areas need to be developed further, and this is something I wasn't able to go deep into in the paper. Also, the research avoids almost studiously root issues for why these differences exist, and that's another area that really should be further pursued. In addition, the mitigations were all related to object saliency, since that's the strength of students with ASD, but there might be creative ways to overcome issues with social or top-down observer goal saliency, and these need to be pursued further. And finally, there are some limitations that are explicitly called out in the literature. Some question whether eye studies are the right way to measure attention and call for alternative methods. And then some say that all of these studies are too synthetic. They lack ecological validity and need to be more realistic and in the real world to be relevant. Thank you for listening to this presentation.